Want help to grow your business? Download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.
Hi, I'm Dale Beaumont and welcome to Empire Builders. I'm standing in for Chris Gray, that's normally the host of this show, but the reason why I'm here is because Chris is going to be the guest on his own show. In the promotions for Empire Builders, we've spoken about why it's cheaper to actually sometimes buy a 3-bedroom house than a 1-bedroom apartment. We also have spoken about why it's cheaper to own a Lamborghini than to drive a BMW. And also we've spoken about how you can live the life of the rich and famous without needing to be a multi-millionaire. So we've made all of those claims and promises, and today we're going to fulfill on all of those, and I've got a whole bunch of questions to ask Chris Gray, and he's going to go through and answer them all for us one by one. So Chris, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be on my own show.
Exactly. So we're now going to go through a whole bunch of questions. We're going to be talking about mindsets, habits, goals, strategy, business. We're going to be talking about debt. We'll be talking about cars, ownership, and about how to become a multi-millionaire. But let's first of all talk about the mindset required. I wanted to ask you the question, when did you first decide that you wanted to be wealthy?
Sure. I think it was the early days of school, boyhood dreams of, you see people with the money that kind of going out, they've got the cars and the toys and all of that kind of stuff. I came from a good family background, but it wasn't a material one. I remember my dad's brother was in Hawaii, and we wanted to go and see him before he moved on from there, and my dad worked out it's £500 a ticket. There's 5 of us, that's $2,500, and we thought we're going to Hawaii, and then he built a patio in the back garden because he thought that was better use of the money. As a kid, you didn't think it was really worth it. Who cares if you've got a patio or not? And so I guess just from an early age then I was just reasonably materialistic, and I just wanted the finer things in life without being ridiculous. And so I think it's because I was good with numbers as well, so I was always into the money. Even though I was in debt since I was kind of 17, I was always minus money, but yeah, I was interested in how it worked.
And growing up, did you have any negative beliefs around money? Oftentimes, we hear from our parents, money doesn't grow on trees, or money's the root of all evil, and things like that. Did you have a negative mindset or a positive one from the early days?
Yeah, look, my parents are very positive. They're very much into education, but certainly not into kind of financial stuff. So my parents still own the same house that we had since I was 4 years old. There's still the same carpets in there. They've still got the same couch that's probably 40 years old that they probably got when they were married. And that was the mentality of that generation. It wasn't to spend money. My parents got, I think my dad passed away, he had a 22-year-old Golf GTI that the insurance company had wrote off, and he said, no, I can repair it, and went to the scrap heap and put another door on. My mum's car's probably 15 years old. So we definitely weren't around kind of throwing money around. I hadn't been on a plane through my childhood. We always travelled on the cross-channel ferry and kind of went 2 days in a car to go and get somewhere. But at the same time, then, yeah, I like any other boy, I had a dream of a Porsche or a Ferrari or something like that, and travelling the world. And so, sure, I think it was just a natural thing that try and make as much money as possible.
So all these years later, how do you see money today?
So I guess as I got older, and probably in my mid-20s, I just wanted to do what I want to do when I wanted to do it without having to worry about money. So I don't think I'm hung up on money, but I just wanted choice. So money represented freedom and choice, whether I worked or I didn't work, how many hours I put in the day, what kind of job I did, if it was actually physically a job. That was my goal. And I've got a good lifestyle. I've got a great lifestyle now, especially compared to a lot of people, but it's not a 6-star lifestyle in a way. So I always thought I'd rather work on my own terms to have a 4 or 5-star lifestyle and do things well, travel a lot and be in cars, but I still drive a 10-year-old car, I rent my family home, I've got boats and toys, but they're not 100% mine. I'd rather that than work 60, 80, 100 hours a week just to fly first class all the time or to own all those toys that I wouldn't have the time to use. So it's all a matter of balance in a way.
Okay, so we're going to talk about all of those things in this interview, but just quickly to tell people about where your sort of portfolio or wealth is at today. You've mentioned that you don't own your own home, which is great. We're going to talk about the reason as to why that's the case later on. You do drive a Lamborghini. Tell people a bit about the lifestyle that you lead.
Sure. So my portfolio is about $13-14 million. I've got 14 properties, roughly worth $1 million each, 12 in Australia, 2 over in the UK. I drive a Lamborghini. It's a 10-year-old Lamborghini Murcielago, and we'll take you through the numbers on that. I've got a couple of boats, but they're effectively share boats. I fly business and first class, but I don't pay for it because I pay for it on points, and that's going to be another show that we're going to do, which is a really very, very cool thing. So I've got a lot of the trappings of being a multi-millionaire, but I'm not necessarily paying full price for them. And this is, I guess, my skill base. So my skill base is analysing numbers, not from a technical or a tax perspective, but I look at something to say, right, I want that car or I want that boat. I can't afford to pay full price, or even if I can pay full price, I can't justify the depreciation or the cost for the value I'm going to get. How do I do it? And that's my skill. It's like, how do I go about this? How do I get from A to B in a quicker, more direct route at a cheaper cost?
All right.
And that's basically what I do.
And just to reassure everybody, you didn't have parents that were super wealthy. You know, you didn't start a .com and sold it for $100 million.
No.
You know, everything that you've done is without a huge base to start, other than just hard work. And
Sure.
You've never done anything like win lotto or develop a business that you sold for a lot of money.
No, so I don't think I'm that clever. I've just done some stuff. And look, sure, I've had some help from parents, and they've supported me along the way. But the majority, so I gave up work at 31 out of Deloitte's. I was only earning $80,000, so that's the biggest salary I've had from a proper job before 31. But at the same time, I was making 600 grand a year from property. And so that's the difference, is I worked out that I was earning 80 grand at Deloitte's, which was 60 after tax. I was earning 600 grand a year from capital growth and property. And look, it was a boom time. It wasn't consistently each and every year, but for a couple of years it was. And I just thought that 600 grand from passive property investing is a lot easier than 60 grand after tax at work. And that's my logic. And so I've got a business now. Sure, technically I do work, but my work is lifestyle to most other people with the kind of things I do. But it's because it's not work and I'm choosing to do it, and it really is a means to an end. So I don't really make that much of a profit from my business, but it secures me the loans and the serviceability to get money from the bank that then might make me $1 or $2 million a year from capital growth.
Now, for those people that are interested in property, we've done a whole other interview, which is titled How to Become a Multi-Millionaire Through Real Estate. And Chris Gray answered all the questions in terms of his specific property strategy. In this interview, we're going to focus on other things other than real estate, and also focus on the mindset as well about how to think and act like a multi-millionaire. So we've talked a bit about mindset. Let's talk about habits. What were some of the habits that you think you had as a late teenager in your early 20s that kind of really laid the foundation for your success? And also to say you don't have to have started in your teens or 20s. You can start today to develop those habits no matter what age you are.
Yeah, look, I was doing some coaching before, and I had a 65-year-old come along and say, is it too late? And I said, well, it depends on how long you want to live. If you want to live 10 years, to me that's a property cycle. So every dollar you put in $500,000 or $1 million now, and you've made another half or $1 million. So it's up to you however long you want to live. I guess the habits, I got into forced saving really, really young.
Explain that.
So I've never really saved a dollar in my life, because if it's in my bank account, I'll spend it. I'll go and have fun. I'm just the same as anyone else. But what I did is, by getting into my first property at 22, I had a mortgage 7 times my income rather than 3, because I managed to use a dad's guarantee to buy a house 3 times more expensive. But the cash flow of renting 2 rooms out meant I actually got it for free. But it's having that forced savings of knowing I had to pay this massive mortgage forced me to get tenants. It forced me to renovate the house so that I could get more money for it. It forced me to make sure that I got another tenant back if they moved out. And it forced me to turn up to my job because I still needed my income from my job as well. So I've then just bought a second property and just had more debt than anyone could imagine or have a nightmare over. And that just forces me to do stuff. And so I go through this cycle of going from poor to rich, and that's my motivator. So to give you an example, say suddenly my portfolio grows and I refinance and I've got lots of cash in the bank. I go and spend that cash. But what I generally do is I reinvest it in more property, and I overextend myself even more. So suddenly I've got no cash, or I've got negative cash, and I think, God, how am I going to pay for this? So I start working. I start ringing customers, I get on the sales calls and doing all that kind of stuff, to then think, if I don't do this, I'm going to get repossessed and I'm going to lose the lot. I then build up money, the property market grows, I've then got cash again. I then go and spend it. And look, some of it I spend on me, but I generally always reinvest in another property because I think I'm wasting my money. And I keep going through those cycles, so feast to famine, but that's my motivator because I'm pretty lazy. And so if it was just sitting there, I'd spend it. But that feast to famine, that's my motivator that gets me going.
What about budgets? Are you a fan of budgets? Have you practiced them yourself?
Look, I'm a fan of a lot of things. I don't necessarily do it myself. But in reality, I do. I know my numbers inside out. But the difference being is I don't concentrate on the dollars and cents anymore. I'm concentrating big picture. So I know exactly all of my rents coming in. I know all of my mortgages going out. And I know that roughly 1% of my property values are in expenses. So I know exactly how much my property portfolio is costing me. And I know that as long as it grows by more than 1 to 3% per year, in the long term I make money, which I think is a reasonable bet because I think the market runs at 7 to 10%. And so I then just need enough cash flow to hold on for the long term till it does turn.
And what would you say to people that go, I'm no good with numbers? It's just an excuse?
Sure. Yeah, pay someone else. Pay someone that is don't focus on the detail, focus on the bigger picture. Get your accountant or a bookkeeper. You can probably pay a bookkeeper $20, $30 an hour to do stuff. So there is no excuse. Sure, it's harder for you if you don't understand the numbers, but the chances are if you're not into numbers, you're into creativity. So you might be a better renovator or a better stylist that can do better things than I can do, whereas I'm just black and white. And so I'm not necessarily a fan of training yourself if you're not good at things. I'm much more of a fan of pay the experts if you can. But look, first home buyers, you haven't got much choice. You've got to do it all yourself. And I'd have an issue if, I remember one in my early days, the property manager said you need a fire alarm in there or smoke detector. And I said, fine as in, I'll go and buy one for $2 and I'll put it in myself. They went and got one or a handyman and they charged me £25 to go and do it. And I went mad because I didn't have £25 to pay them. That's how tight it was in the early days. Whereas now I say if it's under $1,000, don't even tell me, just do it because it's not worth it in the grand scheme of things.
All right, great. So when should people start investing? Is there a right time? Okay.
Last night, maybe this morning, maybe this afternoon. Don't do it tomorrow because tomorrow never happens. So you need a reasonable amount of information. So don't just go out and punt $1 million or $100,000 on something stupid. You need some education. You need to make sure you're making the right kind of choice. But I think today's always a good day. There's always an opportunity to make money. Even in the biggest boom or the biggest financial crisis, there's always an opportunity to do something.
And how important is education? You know, back when you started, there weren't hundreds of books like there are today. You've also written a book on this subject now. How should people educate themselves?
Yeah, look, again, everyone says, oh, it's all right for you. In those days, it's more affordable. It wasn't affordable. Property's always been expensive. Even when our parents bought 40 or 50 years ago, it was expensive then. So I do think most of it is excuses. There is so many books, magazines, TV shows, internet TV shows. There's so much information. You could spend the next 100 years and you wouldn't even get there. So again, it's about balance. It's just try and read a reasonable amount as possible and then kind of take some action. So in the early days, you're going to have to do it yourself. Books are free in the library. Magazines are cheap as peanuts. Internet TV, it's virtually free as well. So there really is no excuse. But then as you get older or more sophisticated, reinvest some of those profits back into hiring better experts. So someone told me years ago at a seminar, spend 1% of your asset base on de-risking it or learning new things.
To continue enjoying this presentation, download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.